Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on the topic of connecting Power BI to any data in SAP. My name is Christoph Schuler. I work at Theobald Software here in the US in the Seattle area, and I'm mostly involved in pre-sales and also some post-sales interactions with our customers. And I will be walking you through the contents of today's presentation over the next about 30 to 40 minutes. So let's get started. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about our company. We have been around for about 18 years now in the SAP connectivity market. And Theobald Software is an ISV, a software vendor, specializing in SAP integration. We're not a consulting company. We're very focused on the development, the marketing, and the support of our ready-to-use SAP connectivity solutions. We have today around 60 employees around the world. Most of them are at our headquarters in Stuttgart. And we service around 3,500 SAP customers today with our solutions. We also have a strong partner network. First and foremost, we are an SAP partner or an SAP certified partner. And we also have a strong relationship with Microsoft as a gold partner. We also partner with service organizations that help our customers to implement solutions primarily in the BI space. And we also work with other technology partners such as Amazon, Tableau, Alteryx, and many others. Let's talk a little bit about what are some common challenges in particular for the Power BI user. This is something we hear quite often from our customers. The first one is that the SAP access is quite restricted in most environments or in most customer environments. The SAP team typically enforces very strict access policies because they might have security concerns, who can access what data. The SAP team might also have some concerns about system impact, especially when you pull larger amounts of data from the SAP system and replicate that into other environments. And there could also be some licensing or auditing concerns. Those are all valid concerns that we help customers to address with our solution. Also, we often get into conversations with the SAP team to talk about these concerns and how our solution helps to alleviate those. Other challenges include IT time and budget restrictions. For instance, customers may not always be able to build or modify a data warehouse environment and populate that environment with SAP data that the Power BI user can work with. Other times, the approach is to develop custom ABAP programs that do the job of data extraction in SAP, but that also takes time and is usually expensive. So what this means is that SAP data self-service is often limited or not possible. And in the next about 15 to 20 minutes, I would like to show you how our solution can help overcome these limitations that you might be experiencing. I mentioned we had a long-standing partnership with Microsoft. In fact, we have many integration points with Microsoft products and solutions, both on-premise and in the cloud. So here's a complete list of all the different Microsoft and Azure products and services that we integrate with and that we can provision SAP data into. For today's presentation, we're going to focus on Power BI Desktop and the Power BI service specifically. If you have an interest to learn more about some of the other integrations with the Microsoft solution stack, I'm more than happy to follow up with you. Here you see an overview of our solution portfolio. On the left is our Xtract suite of products. This is the primary use case for these products is BI and analytics. So this is all about extracting data very reliably, very fast, very efficiently to third-party environments such as Power BI, which we will look at in a moment. We also support Microsoft's integration services through our products Xtract IS and Xtract IS for Azure. And we have a specialized solution for Alteryx users. Today, we will be looking at Xtract Universal. This is our general purpose tool to extract SAP data and then provision that data into all kinds of environments, including Power BI. Over on the right, just for completeness, we also have tools that facilitate read and write access to SAP. Think of a cloud application, either through user interaction or through automation that needs to post a transaction in SAP. Here we have a relatively new product called Unio, which customers can use to do process automation in SAP. Let's take a closer look at Xtract Universal and how it works together to bridge the gap between SAP and Power BI. If we start at the bottom here of this slide, you see that we are compatible with really all SAP ABAP-based systems. For most of our customers, this means some form of SAP ERP, typically ECC or S/4HANA, but we can also connect to SAP BW, SAP CRM, SAP SCM, really anything that runs on the ABAP stack. Then Xtract Universal itself comes with currently 9 different data connectors for your SAP system. This is really the core of our product, the core of our innovation. We consistently update, optimize, and come out with new components. In fact, ODP is an example that I will explain in a moment. But this is really the core of what customers value when they use our products. We always connect to SAP at the application level, not at the database, in the context of an SAP user, and also in the context of those users' permissions in SAP. We can then, you can then use any of these components, table, function, modular, BAPI, a query, report, and so forth, to access different objects in your SAP system. Our goal is to provide you access to any SAP data, regardless of where it's stored or in what shape or form it may exist in. The most common ones that I will show you later also in the demo are the table extractors, also very popular, in particular with analytics tools like Power BI, is the report extractor. Also for S/4HANA systems, our newer ODP, which stands for Operational Data Provisioning, our ODP connector, which allows you to pull data from HANA views or what are called CDS views in SAP. What Xtract Universal then does is it will extract the data and then load or provision it directly into one of our destinations, one of the supported destinations. We support direct connections into analytics tools, including Power BI. We support extract and load into cloud storage environments. Many customers like this option now, in particular with data lakes, whether that's in Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud. Doesn't really matter for us. We support all these environments. And we also support the most common data warehouse environments, either in on-premise configurations or in the cloud, including Amazon Redshift or Snowflake. So as mentioned, today we're going to focus on the Power BI integration with SAP. So for that, I'm going to switch to a demonstration. Okay. I'll start in Power BI with a report that I have pre-built. This is an example for how an SAP report could look. You see over here on the right, I have 3 data sets that I'm working with. They're named SAP BSID, SAP KNA1, and SAP T016T. These are the names of 3 tables that populate these data sets with data. And what I can do with this data set, or with these 3 data sets, is I can pull together an accounts receivables report because that's what these tables store in SAP. I can do things like a refresh, which will do a live update through our tool, Xtract Universal, into SAP. And you could see all the 3 data sets were refreshed in parallel. That's another important feature of our product. You could also imagine, tens or even more users doing these refreshes at the same time. Our tool can handle that and refresh the data concurrently for each Power BI user. So how does this work? If I will switch over here for a moment to our Xtract Universal tool, I have this installed on my local machine. Typically, customers install this on a separate Windows server. The Windows server could be on-premise, or it could be a virtual machine in the cloud. Typically, what customers do is they place this Windows machine in the same network as their SAP environment. It doesn't have to be, but it facilitates the communication with the SAP system. The tool is relatively straightforward. What you see here on the main screen is a list of data extracts. So each row here that you see on my screen represents a data extract. And a data extract is basically 3 things. Number 1, it's a source system, or specifically an SAP source instance. It's always SAP, that's our focus. And you configure a source very similar to how you configure a connection in SAP GUI. I'll bring them up side by side so you see the similarities. Here is my SAP logon, and I have a connection here to an ECC system. If I look at the properties, I can see the connection parameters like application server. There's an instance number, and then when I click on this to log on, I get prompted for a client username, password, and language. We connect in very much the same fashion in Xtract Universal. Here on this source dialog, you specify your application server. We also support load balancing or message server based logon. You provide the instance number, SAP logon client and language. Over here, you could use your username and password, or we also support SNC or SAP logon tickets. And with these parameters, I can test my connection to the SAP system. You can have as many connections as you would like to different instances, to perhaps different systems that serve different purposes, like a sandbox or development or QA system. You can connect under different user IDs or clients. There's no limit here. Once you've configured your source, you will then configure the data extract, the type of data extract. And I'll show you a brief example for how this looks. If I want to do a report, let me actually switch over to SAP for a moment to illustrate this a little bit better. In SAP, you could have a T code or a report, an ABAP report that users might navigate to with just a transaction code. Something like VA05N is an example for a sales order report. Then typically the user would get to a screen that looks like this with some input fields where they can select report parameters. In this case, I could specify an order type or a document number range. Am I only interested in open sales orders or all sales orders? And oftentimes users have what's called a variant, which is nothing more than a predefined set of these parameters. They can then execute the report to see the results on the screen. And with our tool, we have the ability to invoke a report like this. To do this, I will call this webinar demo 1, and I would choose the report component. In the next step, I will either provide the report name or the T-code. In my example, I used VA05N. That's the sales orders view. I can now also choose a variant in the tool, and you can override the values of the variant. You can also override them with parameters in Power BI. And then it's as simple as clicking on this automatic column detection. The report will now execute in SAP, and with that, I can already do a preview of my data. So here's my sales order report data. If I don't want the headers, I can also say skip the top 3 rows. And with that, I have a data extract from my SAP system for my open sales orders. So here is my new data extract. The last thing I need to do is define the destination. And for Power BI, it's as simple as just tagging this data extract with the destination Power BI. There's nothing else to configure. Everything else happens on the Power BI side. So with that, I basically told Xtract Universal, I want to use this data extract in Power BI, similar to this one here, and I have 3 more. These are the tables that I showed you earlier in my open accounts report. All the others have a different purpose. This is what makes Xtract Universal a general purpose tool. It also works with environments like Alteryx or Tableau, or you can store data into flat files or your cloud storage. So there's a 20+ different destinations where you can send your SAP data to. Let's switch over to Power BI and see how I can work with this data. If I open a new report here, you can use the standard get data function, and then you would click on more to see additional data sources. And with Xtract Universal, we provide our own custom connector for Power BI. So this is an extension for Power BI Desktop that we developed, actually for desktop and service that we developed, that works with Power BI Desktop. It also works with the data gateway from Microsoft so that you have connectivity into the cloud. I will show you this in a moment. And the user installs this extension once on their desktop, and then they can work with it. Okay, in the next step, I'm being prompted to specify the location of the server in form of a URL. In my case, I have it local, so it's the local host at this port 8065. For most customers, this would be a server name, depending on where they have installed the Xtract Universal tool. I can now also specify an authentication. This is very important. I have credentials cached here, which is why I wasn't prompted, but it is an important point. So Power BI Desktop supports anonymous, basic, and Windows integrated connections to the data sources. And we fully support those 3 levels of authentication in Xtract Universal. So that means not every Power BI user might have access to, let's say, these 3 data extract. You can restrict access to certain groups or users if you would like to do that. You see here now, I'm connected to Xtract Universal, and I'm seeing 5 data extracts. These are the 5 from here that have Power BI as the destination. These 5 here. All the others go to other environments. They're not interesting to me in Power BI. So the webinar demo is the report that I just showed you. The tool is now doing a preview. It actually runs the report in the background, and you can see I already have my data, and now I can directly load it or further transform it using Power Query. From here on, it's basically a standard Power BI experience. Once I say load, I have a new data set that's coming in here. Okay, and it's shown here at the bottom, and I can work with this data now to create my report. Okay, and this works with the refresh. I showed this earlier. I'll try to do it one more time. All these three queries now run in parallel. And it doesn't really matter whether the report in SAP, whether the extract is based on a report in SAP, or here we have a table extract. I'll show you this one also briefly. Here, we're not targeting a report, an ABAP report, but a direct table, KNA1. You see all the fields here. You can be selective and only bring in the fields that you are interested in. You can also use a where clause to filter your data set. You can even join tables in SAP. That's actually a common thing our customers do. Oftentimes you have in SAP, you have header tables and related item tables. I think this might be an example. Yes, here I have two related tables. VBAK is the header table and VBAP is the line item table. And so you can create a combined data set of these two tables, or it could be more, based on a join that actually happens in SAP. So the data is joined inside of SAP in the ABAP layer before we bring it out into an environment like Power BI Desktop. So the last thing I want to show you is a report for S4 systems or HANA-based systems. Let's call this webinar demo 2. Some of you might already be on HANA, or maybe you are thinking about an upgrade to HANA. So here we are leveraging an SAP technology which is called operational data provisioning. SAP uses this internally to replicate data, for instance, to other SAP systems like BW. It's also utilized in SAP's own SLT, System Landscape Transformation technology. So we have the ability to also connect to this layer in SAP, this ODP layer, and you can choose from 4 different areas in your S4 systems that you want to pull data from. You can pull from what are called core data services views. You can also pull from SAP HANA views, and you can search by description or by name. Many customers create their own Z views or custom views. These are fully supported through this interface, as well as the standard delivered SAP views that you have here, for instance, like an accounts receivables. The other nice thing about ODP is that it not only supports a full data extract, but it also supports delta extract. And so this gives you the capability to utilize SAP's own built-in delta capability to only retrieve changes, for instance, on a customer object or changes on the transaction level instead of the full data set. And again, the nice thing about this is built into SAP. There's nothing you have to install in your SAP system to get this functionality. The only requirement here is that you're on a release level above SAP ABAP 7.3. Now, going back to my accounts receivables report here, I can now publish this into the service. Let's say I want to change my or save my changes first. And then I have the option to publish it to one of my workspaces. I'm going to choose my TS demo here. Okay, it's now telling me this report and dashboard already exists. I'll choose to replace it. And then I can go over into my Power BI service, into my TS demo workspace, and I can see that my data set was just refreshed. This is Seattle local time, 11:27. And I can also do an ad hoc or a scheduled refresh here on the data set. This is supported. Okay, looks like something is not working with the gateway right now. But this is supported through the Microsoft on-premise data gateway. And our connector extension that I showed you earlier is fully compatible with the data gateway. So your refresh not only works in Power BI Desktop, it also works in the cloud in the Power BI service. And I think I had a dashboard somewhere. Here's the same data. So this this is the idea here, to be fully compatible with both Power BI Desktop as well as Power BI Service. Okay, so this was a brief demo of the capabilities. I would now, before we close or open it up for questions, draw your attention to some of our references. I mentioned earlier, we have quite a large number of customers that we work with across all industries. We're not focused on a certain vertical, but we have customers in every industry as well as around the globe in every geography. Here are just some examples that you will also find on our website. I encourage you to take a look at that, and you will also find success stories for some of these customers describing how they used our solutions in their own environment and how it has helped them to enable data extraction from SAP in a reliable and efficient way. Here are some examples for Xtract Universal of some of our case studies. And so I'd like to close with a summary of why customers choose to work with us. I hope you could see that our tools are not super complicated. They're usually, it takes a few hours to get them set up and configured. We're not talking about weeks or months of deployment effort and a steep learning curve and configuration effort. We're also not trying to be a full ETL platform. We're just really trying to facilitate the data access in SAP. We're more of an ENL tool for your SAP environment. So the other thing is automation is a very important topic for many of our customers. I've showed you the refresh options, particularly in Power BI, how that can be achieved either through a manual triggered refresh or in the service through a scheduled refresh. We're very flexible in terms of what type of data we can access in your SAP system. We're not specific to a certain module in SAP. We're also not specific to a certain third party where you can land your SAP data. Safety and security is also high on our list, of course. I did mention that we do support the authentication methods that are built into Power BI Desktop, meaning, other than anonymous, you can connect as username and password to Xtract Universal or with a Windows integrated account. That's the first level of security that we offer, coming from Power BI into our tool, Xtract Universal. But then there's an additional layer of security tied to that SAP connection. The SAP user that you use to connect to SAP, there's additional permissions around that user, and that user only has access to certain data in SAP. So it's a two-level security that is applied here, in particular here with the Power BI scenario that we saw. And last but not least, I want to mention that we are certified both for SAP ECC as well for S/4HANA. All of our products come with a 30-day trial. This comes at no commitment, no cost to you. In fact, we do include our guidance and support at no cost. You can simply go to our homepage at theobald-software.com, download Xtract Universal, and that comes with not only the Power BI desktop destination, but if you have an interest to send data to a data warehouse or a cloud storage, you could also test that if that fits your architecture perhaps a little bit better. There's no limit on functionality, only a time limit for 30 days. That concludes today's presentation. I will now open it up for questions. You can simply type them in the questions or the chat window. Okay, I see a few questions have come in. Does Xtract Universal save the data on the server for the Power BI connector, or does it pull it straight from SAP? Yeah, it's a straight pull from SAP. We do not store the data on the server, on the Windows server where Xtract Universal is installed. So there's no database requirement on that server. In fact, the footprint of our tool is very small. It installs under 500 megabytes. So yeah, it's a straight pull through from SAP into Power BI desktop. And then in desktop, you have the data as a data set, but there's no other storage in between. Are the HANA information views the same as calculation views? Yes, the HANA information views are basically calculation views or analytics views, and they have to be exposed at the ABAP layer for us to see that through ODP. But that's just a flag that usually the developer of the view sets, and then those views can be accessed and worked with in the ABAP layer, and that also makes them accessible in our tool. Then there was a question about licensing. Yes, so the licensing for Xtract Universal is we have a base license for the server, and that gives you a few destinations like HTTP, CSV, and Parquet, the file-based destinations. Any other destination, let's say you want to connect to Power BI, as we saw, or you want to connect your SAP data to Azure Data Lake or something, that requires an add-on. So you don't have to purchase another license. It's just an incremental add-on to your existing license for that destination. And that's a relatively small fee, and I can get back to you on with a price quote. Yeah, and then there was a question about the ETL tool comparison. Yeah, I do want to emphasize this because we hear about SAP Business Objects, we hear about Informatica. Fivetran is a more modern cloud-based tool. Those are great tools, and some of them also have capable SAP extractors, in particular of course, SAP Data Service, SAP's own ETL tool. But these tools come at a cost and complexity. These are full ETL platforms that connect any system to any system, not just always SAP. And we're not trying to compete in that market. We are an E&L, an extract and load tool for SAP. We do very little transformations in the middle. The main thing we transform are SAP data types to, a data type of the receiving system. So when you see a date and time field from SAP, it will show up as such in Power BI or in SQL Server, wherever you load the data. But otherwise, we're not transforming or give you the capability to transform the data. We basically represent the data as it is in SAP in the receiving system. And I hope in the demo I've shown that the tool is relatively easy to use. It installs in just a few minutes with a setup script. I explained earlier that there's no database underneath, so it's not a very complex tool, and that's intended. And it also comes at a much lower price point compared to a full ETL platform. Then there was a question about, is there a way to alert users after extracts run? So for Power BI, there is not a direct way to do that because it's more of an ad hoc thing usually, unless it's scheduled in the service. However, on our side, we log every extract when it runs, and we have a logging mechanism built in. And those logs are exposed through a simple API, a URL-based API. So you could build something like a script maybe, or something custom that looks at these logs, and it will identify who ran the last data extract or when it was run, what was the result, was it successful, was it not successful, things like that. So it is possible through the logging mechanism and the API that exposes the logs. Okay. I think I've gotten to all of the questions so far. I will stay on for another minute to see if something else comes in, and then I will close the broadcast. Great. Then I want to thank you again for your time today. I appreciate it, and feel free to reach out to me. We will actually follow up with an email in a couple days. So feel free to follow up with us if you have any more questions or if we can further assist you. Thank you and have a great day.